What was your role on the day of the Uvalde school shooting?
So on May 24th, we went to Uvalde from San Antonio in our live truck and immediately went over to the Civic Center that was there. We were one of the first teams on scene there, and we were just trying to gather some information. When we got to the Civic Center, we knew that it was going to be a reunification center for those families whose kids were taken out of Robb Elementary. We knew those buses took them the mile just down the road to get to that Civic Center, and we waited there for a press conference that was supposed to be happening that just kept getting pushed back further and further throughout the day. And as the day progressed, that's when we realized it wasn't necessarily a reunification center at that point anymore. We knew it had turned into something a lot sadder than that. There was empty chairs in the lawn outside of the Civic Center that were originally set up for parents. There was also a whiteboard that had names of teachers that their classes were at the Civic Center. So we could see all of that happening. And as they kept pushing the time back for a press conference of some kind, we knew we weren't going to be getting any positive news while we were there. We saw a lot of parents crying, a lot of people on their phones. Then the governor came on, and then that's when he said initially that 14 children and one teacher were dead. And then that's when the press conference happened. And once we were brought inside for that press conference in just one of the private rooms at the Civic Center, it was very brief. They didn't allow for any questions. They just read a prepared statement. It was the school district and then also the Uvalde CISD police chief, Pete Arredondo, at the time, talking about what had happened. They gave us no details, just that there were deaths and there were injuries, and they were still investigating what happened. But that's what our role was on May 24th, gathering information and being there as that scene developed at the Civic Center.
What were the days like following the shooting?
I think even to where we are at right now, you can't go to Uvalde without just feeling a wave of sadness. And that was very, very apparent in the days and weeks that have followed. It was just an extreme sadness everywhere that you went in that community. There didn't feel like there was any joy left there because 19 children and 2 teachers were killed inside of a school. It was hard to be there, and it's still hard going there every time because that shouldn't have happened, and we all know it shouldn't have happened. And as more details come out, you have a sense of anger too, and I think that's more evident. But immediately following May 24th, that day and the days that followed have been very, very sad throughout the entire community, especially when you get to that school. When you're at the school memorial, it feels like you're walking on hollowed ground, and there's not a lot of talking. There's a lot of murmured prayers and muffled sobs, and people paying their respects to those kids and those teachers. I think that's the atmosphere that's going to persist for a long time there.
Did anyone in particular leave an impression on you?
I think the entire community has left an impression. Every single person you meet knew someone that's been personally affected by this in one way or another, whether their child lost their best friend, whether their neighbor lost their child, whether their favorite H-E-B grocery store worker lost his wife and then he passed away the next day. I think every single person you meet in Uvalde has their own story, and it's a story worth listening to, and it's a story that's going to impact you. So I don't think I could say anyone in particular. I think it's everyone there.
Having spent days in Uvalde, what did you learn from the community?
Uvalde is not your stereotypical small town. In some ways it is. Nothing takes too long to get to. You can get from the Civic Center to that elementary school in just a few minutes. You can get to people's houses in just a few minutes from everywhere downtown. I think what sets Uvalde apart is that sense of community, that sense of deep love, not something superficial, not just because we're in a small town, we love each other. It's a deep sense of we are a family. I think the culture of Uvalde is one that is going to rise. So many times we see Uvalde strong or Parkland strong, Orlando strong after a shooting or something like this happens. I think Uvalde really embodies that because of the way that we've seen people just holding on to each other and hugging each other and loving on one another throughout this time. I think Uvalde is going to embody that strong nature and isn't going to let this define who they are, isn't going to let one person's hatred and evil take over what they know. I think they're going to let love win in this and not let this define them. So many kids and parents have told me they don't want these victims remembered by how they died. They want them remembered how they lived. And that's what Uvalde is.